In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to jump up the JavaScript language hierarchy. We're going to jump away from the document object and we're going to go up to the window object up here. And we're going to use the window object to spawn some windows, like pop-up windows that we see in all of those annoying sites. So I'm going to show you how to use the window object's open method, and we'll spawn some windows in a couple of different ways. The goal of this video, besides teaching you how to open windows and spawn them, is to get you comfortable with looking at the different objects in JavaScript to look at its functions that are built in there so you can use those functions to do all kinds of different things. So you see here's our basic web page. I've created a lot of the code offline so that you don't have to watch me typing things. So what I've done here is I've linked to an external JavaScript file. I just called it spawn_window.js. And on a paragraph, I've added an onClick event handler where I call a function called spawnWindow. So let's pop open the spawnWindow.js file. We see it over here actually. Bring this into view. And in there is our code. So this is a very, very basic function. This function has several arguments. This is the simplest argument pair that we have here. So we got window, that's the window object, and we got our pointer, and it's the open function. So the two arguments that we have in this function are A, the page that you want to open. I'm opening an absolute URL, basically a website, but you can open up any page you want as long as the path is findable. So if you can spawn pages in your own website and so on, you don't necessarily have to open a URL on the web. Just so that you know, it's like a link, just like a hyperlink, same rules. This second argument here, argument after the comma. Now I'm assuming that you've done the previous videos so you understand what I mean by arguments and so on. This gives it's an identifier for the window. And it's a handle. It's like a variable in a sense where you can use this name here to reference the window and do all kinds of other fancy things to it. But these days in JavaScript we don't use too much, although in the past it was used quite often. I'm just putting it in there for the sake of this example. And there are other optional arguments that you can use in the open function built into the Windows object. So let's just try this out and we'll take it from there. So first thing, I'm going to try it out in Internet Explorer, and you'll see why in a second. So let me just reload the page. And we hit, of course the onClick was on this piece of text, which annoyed people with that paragraph. So let's just load this up. Click on it, and you see a window pops open with our target page. Pretty cool. So let's see how this looks in Firefox. So we have Firefox here, and I click on this. Now, interestingly enough, in Firefox, instead of spawning a window, it spawns it to a tab instead, which is fine. It works for me. It's probably a setting in Firefox, but just understand you got different behavior depending on the browser. To spice things up a little, I've created a variation on the script, and I called it spawn_windows_fancy.js. I just stuck it in another JS file, as you can see here. And what I've done is added new arguments to the window function, and you see I have it here, width and height. So I'm able to set the width and height of the window that we're spawning. So let's take a look at that here. So Internet Explorer, I hit annoy people, and pop-up blocked by Google toolbar. So let's allow blocked stuff. So let's try again. There we go. So as you can see, the window pops up and it's set to the height and width I specified. Notice that there are no scroll bars, no menu bars or anything like that. That's because of the window.open method, where if you start specifying these parameters like width and height, there's a whole bunch of other ones as well, which we're going to get into in a second. All of a sudden the browser assumes that you just want a very plain window with no borders and no scroll bars or anything like that. So let's add some new parameters now, we'll see how that works. So let's go with, we'll say, we'll get a comma, we'll go scroll bars equals yes. Let's save that. Let's see what the page looks like now. Allow blocked. As you can see now, our window has scroll bars. But you see, we can't resize the window, so let's make the window resizable. So now let's make that window resizable, and I just did it simply right here. I used the resizable option. I said yes, and yeah, let's just launch our page, see what happens. Pop-up block was there we go. So as you can see, we got the scroll bars and a little arrow appears, and we can actually resize our window. Pretty cool. So I imagine you're starting to get an idea about how this all works and what it's all about. I just put the word wrap back on so we can see everything. So as you notice, we have our three main arguments so far. We have the actual page we want to open up, the reference name we want to give to the window, and you see this third bunch of arguments. This is actually sort of like one argument options. You notice there's one quote here, as opposed to quoting each of these. This is kind of like one big argument. We'll call it options. And you got all these sub options here. We got the width, height, scroll bars. And if you just look up on the web, you're going to see that window.open has a whole bunch of other options, arguments that you can add to it, which we don't really need to get into in this video. Key, again, to take away is, well, now you know how to spawn windows. And, well, one last thing. You know what? What I want to do is I want to really show you how you can annoy people. This is how you get the pop-ups. On load, and then we're going to go spawn window. Here we go. So, yeah, let's just, we save that, reload this. Pop-up blocked. So I'm going to say allow. And I didn't click on anything, and we have our infamous pop-up window that we all hate. And that's all it is, right? On the onload, we call the spawn window function. One last thing I should have pointed out in the previous video, you could link to separate JavaScript files, right, like this. So we are essentially here linking to two external JavaScript files that we've seen before, right? Spawn window JS and spawn window fancy JS. And the problem I was going to suggest is that in both JS files, we have the same function name. Now, in some languages, that might create a conflict, right? Because you got JavaScript might not know which spawn window to use. But in JavaScript, what will happen is that this spawn window function, well, whatever's in here, is going to overwrite this one. So we should get the simple spawn window on the when the function is called. So let me just remove this onload because that would just annoy me to no end. I'm going to reload this. So let's try it again. Google, of course, will block it. Try again. There we go. See, that's exactly what happened. See, the window spawned open and it was full size, etc., etc. That's because spawn window, when we called it here, since this came first, a second, the simple spawn window function, right here, was spawned rather than this fancy one. So if I just reverse this, let's try that again. Now we get the fancy one.